These are reefers. They're cigarettes made with marijuana or pot instead of the normal tobacco. They are illegal in New Zealand.
A friend of mine said, come outside for a moment, and I thought, what on earth does he want?
We hid down below the windowsill level in this front room of a grey linn house.
And then he said, have this.
We smoked some, got no effect at all. Next night, had another go.
We had a few puffs together and he said, oh, you can finish it off.
It enhanced everything.
The feeling of bliss and warm and enjoying everything, and it was just fabulous, and I just enjoyed it, and I've never looked back.
The second night we tried it, we got shockingly stoned. I can understand why people think it's a fearsome thing, because the first experience with it is so powerful that it scared me.
The musicians, everything was there with you in the room, sitting on your lap. You know, it was just so real.
We went to the nearest dairy, which was only a block away, and just about got lost on the way. Had a great deal of fun retracing our steps back to the house.
That was the beginning of pretty regular marijuana use for me for the next 20, 30 years.
A new attitude towards experimentation meant more New Zealanders were using cannabis. Some was grown locally, but new supply lines were being created. Thousands of American military personnel were stationed in Christchurch to service the Antarctic bases. They brought with them new music and other coveted goods.
They were probably also a conduit for drugs because, of course, you know, they had diplomatic immunity in the sense that their bags were not searched. Some of the guys that ended up in Christchurch already had a known connection with drug use. If you messed up in the States, you could be court-martialed and perhaps sent to prison, or you could go to Christchurch.
And they would introduce seeds, and apparently marijuana was growing up and down the banks of the Avon River, and nobody knew except the people who were harvesting it and smoking it.
Many of my contemporaries in the Navy had used marijuana, had used LSD.
I think New Zealanders had long had a fantasy relationship with America. They wanted to be Americans.
I can remember observing people buying marijuana at the base in Christchurch.
By 1967, there was a new drug on the market, LSD or acid, so new that it was completely legal.
It was sort of self-induced madness. Well, I first had some LSD in Sydney. When I came back to Auckland, there seemed to be a lot of interest in LSD everywhere. Popular music kept referring to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which we all said must refer to LSD and how fabulous it was. We ritualised it so that we got up early in the morning, we took it, and we knew that half an hour later it would start you would notice your breathing change, the excitement started happening, and trees started twinkling and carrying on. And as the sun came up, you know, it was all absolutely the first sunrise ever and fantastic.
LSD was invented around the time of the Second World War by a chemist called Albert Hofmann. It's a psychedelic drug. Now, psychedelic means a drug which tells us more about how the mind constructs a sense of meaning. Some of its most important effects don't involve hallucinations. People can take quite high doses of LSD. They might see an enhancement of colour. So quite simple things. You could look at a chair or your hand and it can be absolutely suffused with meaning.
Before 1967, anyone could go tripping in the park on a Sunday afternoon without fear of arrest. But the head of the Auckland Vice Squad, Brian Stewart, was about to put a stop to that.
I put in a report about it because I knew it was around from different informants I had. And the day it became a narcotic, I arrested a fellow called Mark Young for it. I think he was definitely the first in New Zealand.
Mark Young was arrested one day and I was arrested the next day.
That fellow Grimsdale, did I tell you about that? He was living up in Park Avenue, just by the hospital there. And I went up there and arrested him for it.
I was getting ready for work after a weekend of fun and tripping probably, and bang at the door, and I think it was 6 or 7 of the vice squad were there. I had a couple of tabs of LSD hidden away, and when they got nasty and physically threatening, I'm such a coward, I've never been beaten up, and I didn't want to get beaten up by the cops then. So I just said, oh well, here it is.
His girlfriend took an instant dislike to me. A few days later, they rang me up from district office and said there was a parcel up there for me. But they said it smelled a bit. And I said, oh well. So they brought it down, I opened up, and there was a bloody big dead rat covered in maggots. And I'm sure it came from her. I used to call her the rat girl after that.
The daring and audacity of drug users was still seen as shocking by the rest of New Zealand society.
The day I was arrested, I rang my family in Christchurch and to let them know, I said I've been arrested for drugs. Ah, well you can't expect any help from us. Bang.
LSD was now illegal, but that didn't stop people from using it. The influence of the drug was soon seen in our popular culture, especially in music.
The whole idea with psychedelic pop was to orally simulate an LSD trip.
I live in a castle with fairies and things.
1968, a North Shore folk singer called Bryce Peterson wrote a song called Gracious Lady LSD.
I deliberately wanted people to know that LSD was quite nice actually.
Bryce unexpectedly received 2 tabs of acid in the mail and decided to share them with his wife.
We were sitting there for about 3/4 of an hour and nothing seemed to be happening, and I said to Dorothy, can you feel anything? She said, no, not really, and all of a sudden I looked down at my spotted dog, and all the spots left his body and went right down and sat on the end of his tail. All these spots, and I'm going, wait a minute, this can't be right. And this was a spotted dog with a big patch over his eye, right? And suddenly he's a pure white dog with a whole lot of spots on his tail. And I thought, oh yeah, there's something happening here, you see. Dorothy and I decided we were perfectly safe to go for a drive, and her and I jumped in the car. We went over to the domain and we walked through the gardens, and we had the most beautiful day I've ever had in my life with anybody. Just visual, you know, all the flowers, the grass was growing, you could see it growing, you'd see all the flowers waving, and it was just absolutely the most beautiful thing her and I both experienced together. And I went home and wrote Gracious Lady LSD on the strength of it. We wandered through the lonely, the multicoloured flowers.
We wandered through the multicoloured flowers, not knowing where the world might be.
I remember there was a friend of mine working in Louisides, and she wrote me up. She said, what have you written on that record? I said, why? And she said, well, the police have just been here with a warrant to pick them all up. And she said, they've been around every record shop and they've got all the records and they're going to destroy them. And it was like destroying Dave, you know what I mean? They were going to go away and destroy them so people couldn't hear it. It was absolutely stupid.
Although we're apprehending some, we're certainly not apprehending all. And one wonders if in fact we're only touching the tip of the iceberg.
The police found themselves having to enforce drug laws that more and more New Zealanders were willing to break.
There has been a call in New Zealand for the liberalisation of laws in respect of marijuana.
The more people flouted the law, the harder the police had to fight back.
Don't stand in my way. It's a drug of psychological dependence, and it has an undesirable effect on many people in the community. The liberalisation of its use must be ignored in the common good.